I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who waited for her best friend's boyfriend to glance a second too long. But the truth is, I noticed him before she ever introduced us. Zayn had that effortless kind of charm. His shirt always a little wrinkled, like he just rolled out of bed. That scruffy beard he barely maintained. And a grin that could make you forget mid-sentence what you were talking about. He was too much of everything. And Carrera, my best friend, never seemed to notice how magnetic he was. Or maybe she did and just assumed the world would stay safe around her. The night she finally introduced him, she laughed and said, "This is Zayn." "He's not as dumb as he looks, I swear." Zayn had winked. "Depends on the day," he said with a smile. I shouldn't have smiled back, but I did. And from that moment on, it became a pattern. She brought him around casually. Movie nights, dinners, group hikes. And I kept pretending not to notice how close he stood. How his hand would linger on the small of my back when brushing past. How sometimes I'd glance up to find him already looking at me. But I never crossed the line. Not even close. I had someone too, technically. An on-again, off-again guy named Evan who couldn't stick to a plan longer than a weekend. Still, it wasn't about Evan. It was about something inside me that stirred every time Zayn walked into a room. A silent dare. The kind you pretend not to hear. When Carrera planned the party, it all seemed innocent. Just a backyard get-together with music, drinks, and a handful of friends. "Lena, stay the night," she said. "You always leave early." I agreed. Mostly because I didn't want to go home to an empty apartment and Evan's unread messages. It was one of those summer nights that felt too warm to end. Carrera drank fast and early as always. By midnight, she'd vanished upstairs with a couple of her cousins, muttering something about needing to lie down. Zayn and I stayed by the fire pit while everyone else slowly trickled out. I sipped something sugary, half listening to him talk about work, mostly just watching how the firelight played off his face. "She's been distant lately," he said, eyes fixed on the glowing coals. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself." He nodded. "Maybe she doesn't know how to say what she's feeling." He glanced at me. "And you do." "Sometimes," I answered quietly. We didn't say much after that. Just stared ahead. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. His hand was close to mine. Closer than it should have been. I didn't move. I don't remember who leaned in first. Maybe both of us did. But before anything happened, Carrera's voice called out from the hallway window upstairs. "Zayn, come up here. I need you." He didn't move right away. He looked at me, really looked, and said nothing. Then stood, brushed invisible lint from his jeans like nothing had just almost happened. "I'll see you in the morning," he said. Barely slept. The guest room felt too still. The sheets too crisp. Every creak in the hallway made me flinch, expecting to see his shadow at the door. But nothing came. No knock. No whispered apology. No drunken confession. Just silence. At breakfast, Carrera was chipper and hungover. Zayn avoided eye contact. I pretended everything was normal, but inside I didn't know what I wanted more. For him to touch me. Or for this ache to go away. But what stayed with me wasn't the firelight or the almost kiss. It was the way he looked at me when she called him. Like he was choosing. Like he didn't want to. Maybe I read too much into it. Maybe I was just desperate to feel anything other than boredom. And the quiet fear that I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. But as I stirred sugar into my coffee and listened to Carrera ramble about her dreamless sleep and missing socks, all I could think about was his hand almost touching mine. The silence between us. And the way he didn't say goodbye. Should have ended there. That would have been the smart thing. The right thing. But I already knew I was going to see him again. And worse. I knew that if he leaned in again, I wouldn't stop him. The kitchen was still quiet the next morning. The house had that heavy stillness that follows a long night. Half-drunken conversations and unspoken mistakes. Carrera was still asleep upstairs, and I assumed Zayn had either left early, or was avoiding me. Either one would have been fine. But then I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate. He appeared from the hallway, shirtless, towel drying his damp hair. His eyes caught mine, and lingered there a little too long. "Morning," he said, voice rough and low. "Morning," I replied, focusing hard on the coffee mug in my hands, like it needed all my attention. He walked over, opened the fridge like it was his own, took a swig from a juice bottle, and leaned against the counter next to me. "Carrera still asleep?" he asked. "Yeah." We stood there, breathing the same air, pretending last night hadn't almost happened. I hated the silence more than I should have. I wanted him to say something reckless. And I hated myself for wanting that. "She's lucky to have a friend like you," he said suddenly. I shot him a look. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" He chuckled, low and genuine. "No, I just meant, you've always been solid. Real. Unlike you." I asked, the words sharper than I meant. He didn't answer right away. Then he took a step closer. "You didn't pull away last night." My breath caught. I held the mug tighter like it could anchor me. "Neither did you," I said. He took the mug from my hands and set it on the counter. And before I could stop myself, we were kissing. No music. No slow build-up. Just heat, frustration, guilt, desire. Crashing into one stolen moment. Broke it. "This is wrong." "I know," he whispered, but didn't step back. "That's why it feels like this." I told myself to walk away. I didn't. Instead, we stumbled into the guest room, the one with the 2 white sheets and a window cracked open. Every second felt like a choice we couldn't undo. Every touch carried more weight than it should have. Clothes fell like confessions. His hands moved like he knew what he was doing, but his body didn't cooperate. There was a pause, one that lasted too long. He kissed me harder, trying to push past it. But it wasn't working. Couldn't. He pulled away, cursing softly. I don't know what's wrong with me. I lay there, breathless, confused. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe, he said, sitting at the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Or maybe I wanted it too much. I didn't know what to say. I pulled the blanket around myself, suddenly too aware of everything. My choices, his frustration, and the sunlight cutting across the floor like judgment. He looked back at me. This didn't happen. Okay, he nodded. It didn't. He got dressed quickly. No final words. No lingering look. Just the sound of the door opening and closing behind him. I sat there for a long time alone, unsure if I was disappointed it hadn't happened, or relieved. Kara came downstairs an hour later, cheerful and clueless. She didn't notice anything different. She joked about how much she'd drunk, how Zane had brought her water in bed. I laughed along with her, my stomach turning with every forced smile. Later when I left, I didn't say goodbye to him. He didn't come out. And maybe that was for the best. But that night in my apartment, the silence was deafening. I couldn't stop thinking about his hands, his mouth, the look in his eyes right before everything fell apart. It wasn't even the act, it was the attempt. The fact that we were both willing to go there. Until something bigger than both of us stopped it. He wanted it. I did too. And yet, it didn't work. I told myself it was over. That the awkward silence would scare him away. That it meant nothing and would fade like a bad memory. But deep down I knew better. Because men don't always walk away from temptation. They circle it, study it, wait for another chance to get it right. And women like me, we wait too. A week passed. A week of pretending. Of ignoring how quiet my phone stayed. No call from Zane. No awkward message. Just silence. The kind that hangs like a stain no one wants to look at. Midweek, Kara texted me. Come over Saturday night. Just need girl time. I didn't want to go. Every part of me screamed no. But I said yes. When I arrived, she greeted me like nothing had changed. She talked fast, moved quickly. Maybe because she sensed Zane had been acting different. Or maybe because she didn't notice anything at all. That was the thing about Carrera. She lived in motion. She never stayed still long enough to see what was cracking underneath. He was in the kitchen, his back turned, slicing limes. I froze for just a second. He looked up, gave me a polite nod. That was it. Just a nod. As if my body hadn't been under his hands days ago. As if we were strangers now. Dinner was casual. Drinks were flowing. Kara was on her second margarita when she leaned back and said something that dug right into my ribs. I don't know what's gotten into him lately, she laughed. Zane's been extra sweet. And honestly better in bed too. She laughed like it was a compliment to herself. I forced a smile. Felt like I might choke on air. Zane didn't look at me. He kept eating, calm and cold. I stared at my plate, gripping the fork like it might anchor me. Later, Carrara's cousin called from the airport. Her ride had cancelled. I'll go, Carrara said, already reaching for her keys. It's just 20 minutes. You two can survive without me. She left in a rush, the door slamming behind her. And just like that, it was me and him again. We didn't speak at first. I moved to the sink, rinsing glasses just to give my hand something to do. He came up behind me. Too close. You didn't text, I said, not turning around. I didn't know what to say. You didn't want to say anything. He paused. I didn't stop thinking about it. I turned then, heart pounding. Not about what had happened, but what hadn't. He stared at me. About what almost did. About what still could. There was no more pretending. He stepped forward, and this time I didn't move. I should have. But I didn't. He kissed me like he had something to prove. Like the silence between us had sharpened over time. His hands were more certain now. Less hesitant. My body remembered him. And this time there were no interruptions. No hesitation. He didn't fumble. Nothing failed. It happened on the same couch Kara had fallen asleep on so many nights before. Barefoot and comfortable. It happened under soft lighting and louder breathing. It happened with her perfume still hanging in the air. And then it was over. He sat back, running a hand through his hair. I curled my knees into my chest. Half naked, half numb. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Did that mean anything to you? Yes, he said, not looking at me. It meant something, in the moment. That's not what I asked. He stood, zipped up, avoided eye contact. You already know the answer. I sat there, angry with myself. Angry that I let it happen again. Angry that it felt good. Angry that it wouldn't stop unless I stopped it. Carrera came back 15 minutes later, full of energy and holding bags of takeout for her cousin. She thanked Zane for staying up and kissed him on the cheek, like we hadn't just betrayed her. I watched the way he smiled at her. So casual, so practiced. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. Every movement reminded me of what we'd done. Every creak in the hallway felt like a ghost. In the morning I left without saying goodbye. He didn't stop me. On the drive home I kept thinking, what comes next? If there was a next. If I'd do it again. If I hated myself for wanting to. Because now that he'd gotten in, now that the boundary was shattered, he was in my head, even when he wasn't around. And that was the real betrayal. Not what we did, but how I didn't regret it.